Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Teach, Sleep, Repeat. My name is Dylan.
And my name is Hayden.
How you doing, Hayden?
I'm alright. I'm alright.
You wanted to have a little...
I'm alright. A little... I don't know, I feel like you're going to take the mic.
No, don't.
You're going to take the mic.
This is a safe space.
Is it?
Unless it's about the clothes you wear.
Yeah, wait, sorry.
In which
Hang
case...
on. Every single time. It's funny because this is my house and every single time I'm wearing something, you seem to wear the same.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, it's weird.
maybe you're inspired by me. But anyway.
Makes me think I need to change what I'm wearing. Oh, I look quite similar to that guy. Normally we start off with a nice cheerful, hello, how you doing everyone? Yeah. And then we talk about how everyone should be, rating the podcast because we've got a lot of brand new listeners. Yeah. So they should maybe give us a 5-star review. It'd be really helpful. Share the podcast, etc. But you wanted to cut through all that.
Yeah, I don't think we should do that today.
Okay, no.
So let's not do that.
Shouldn't ask the viewers to do all that lovely stuff for us.
No, I think we asked them a lot to rate us on Spotify and iTunes. iTunes.
We can tell who's the one who does the asking.
You tell who doesn't use Apple. Old iTunes music and whatever they call it these days.
Grab your iPods, guys. And scroll through to the Teach, Sleep, Repeat podcast.
And rate it. But we won't ask them. We won't ask them. Not today.
Anyway.
I don't know. Look, we're coming up to episode 100.
We are.
And I think that's maybe playing on my mind because I can't fathom the fact that we've done 97 of these before this one.
Yeah.
Where is that time gone?
Well, that's how time works.
I knew you'd take the mic.
No, I'm just time chugs on, doesn't it?
What at a point?
At a constant rate.
Our children are also aging at a constant rate.
Yeah, I know.
And I just, it's going so quick.
Well, do you know something? Very, very roughly aligned with the start of this podcast. Mm-hmm. Maybe it made us more virile and ready to go because our babies were conceived around that time as well.
Yeah.
It just so happens that if you look back to when we started the podcast in early 2023, both of our babies were born in late 2023.
Yeah.
So you can track back basically the entire journey through pregnancy and through birth and through our children growing up. It's like almost like a marker of how old this podcast is.
I know that's what I mean,
well.
but that's gone so quick.
Yeah.
It's gone so quick, and it just worries me. People always say, like older people, be like, "Oh, you just wait. As you get older, the time it just goes quicker." And like you said, I'm normally sarcastic. I'm like, "Oh, it doesn't though. Time does. It just goes the same."
No, but I think it perceives to go quicker genuinely because if you're 40, a year to you is a 40th of your life.
Yeah.
If you're 10. A year to you is a 10th of your life, and you don't even remember the first 2 or 3 years. So it's much more proportional-wise, a big chunk of your life. So I think there is definitely truth in it, and I think when you have children who grow so incredibly quickly and develop so quickly and change so quickly, from like 3 months for our children is unbelievable the amount of change they go through.
Yes, so much happens.
If you rewind 3 months and then look at now. Our babies are walking. Our babies are talking way more. Rory reacts to things. He says yes and no.
Yeah, mine's running.
Yeah, yours is running. Yours knows all the times tables.
Yeah,
quicker than Sophie B at doing the times tables up to 100 already. It's insane.
Quicker than old Sophie, Sophie the robot. Yeah, but I don't know. I'm just feeling weird about it. I was laying in bed last night just thinking, am I just going to be 50 like that, and then our kids are just adults, and we'll be like, that's gone.
Honestly, yeah.
But that's horrible, isn't it? It makes me,
we need to make the most of it, genuinely. And I know people are listening probably now. If you don't have kids, you're probably thinking, well, I've got all this to come, or I'm choosing to not do that, or I can't do that for whatever reason. I think people go through this thought process either way.
Yeah.
You get older and you think, you just blink and you're 40. I'm 31, you're 32. You look 40 already. So, I mean, that must play on your mind.
Baby, I've looked 40 since I was 23.
Time's gone so quick.
Listen, hun.
Overnight, you aged 15 years.
Literally. There's one perk of being bald, which is that you kind of look the same for a long time.
Yeah, to be fair, when you're 50, I'll go like, you look well.
You look well. You were 23. You look exactly the bloody same. Yeah. Apart from the belly. I'll ignore that.
Oh, but back to a serious point. Genuinely, I do know what you mean. It is time does just seem to move quickly. It does seem that way. So on that note, how's your week been? That's gone really quick.
Other than my monthly existential crisis that I have, every now and then, I've been pretty good. So we obviously went to Bet last week. We spoke about that in our last episode. And when we visited the White Rose stand, we were given some Tiny the Turtle plushie teddies, weren't we? And they were fantastic. So you've had one in your class.
Yep.
I've had one in my class.
Where have you put yours? Yeah.
Hilariously. Now, you put an Instagram picture.
Yeah, that was my room.
Of your Tiny the Turtle on your board. I did the exact same thing.
Did you
Obviously, it was also leaning on my board because it fit nicely. The legs kind of went over it nicely.
Yeah.
It was there. But I've got... they're fascinated by it. I've got year 6. I thought they'd be like, oh... Well done, Mrs. Stevens. That's stupid. Chuck it in the bin.
Yeah.
But they were like, hand straight up. I'm thinking, can we take turns maybe, and who looks after it each day? I was like, Jesus Christ, you're that into this Tiny the
That's
Turtle.
Brilliant.
They absolutely love it.
It shows how much we use White Rose, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know.
These kids in year 6 are like, it's a celebrity. I've seen Tiny every week for my whole school life.
What were the year 4s like? I bet they loved it.
They absolutely loved it. It was so nice because, do you know what? Kids in general jump on any opportunity for something that's a bit different and fun.
Yeah.
I find that in general, and I think sometimes we get caught in that trap of just like very strictly doing your work, which I think is great for a lot of reasons. But every now and then, geez, have a bit of fun. And this was that moment to do it. And we had Tiny, and I'd put him on the board before anyone had come in.
Right.
So I didn't say anything either. They were coming in, and it's amazing how perceptive children are when it's not their own work and doing things wrong in their own work. Because within 0.5 seconds, the first child who walked in went, "You've got Tiny!" And I was like, so funny. Can you tell me the date today? No, underneath Tiny. Wouldn't be able to see that date. No. Well, what's the date today? It's underneath the turtle you've been shouting about for 5 minutes. It's just there.
You're the one you spotted immediately.
Yeah, exactly. But they loved it. I said on Instagram, one of the children put their hand up, and we kind of gone over the whole. We've got a Tiny. How did you get in? Blah blah blah. There's only 2 in the whole school. Mine and Mr. Stevens' classroom. It's very very special. Oh, gonna put him here so he can watch because he needs to learn, doesn't he, Tiny? Anyone who uses White Rose knows that Tiny's wrong 99% of the time. So really good for growth mindset. Really good for the children being able to say, no, it's because of, and they're doing reasoning without thinking.
But
anyway, we had that whole chat about it. We kind of settled back down, done some of our times table work, ready to start our lesson. And a child just put their hand up. And I went, yeah. And he went, can I just say one thing to Tiny, please?
To Tiny?
Yeah, to Tiny. To him, the plushie on the board. And I was like, yeah, of course, go on. And he turned to Tiny and he went, Tiny, you have to stop getting things wrong. And he was being genuine, like, we're gonna help. You gotta stop, mate. And we're gonna help you today. Okay. So it was a really nice hook. My kids loved it, but Tiny stayed there all day. So we have maths in the morning, and maths classes are slightly different to English and afternoon classes. But every single child who saw him for the first time was buzzing, and I was like, funny, it's nice though. It's lovely.
Yeah, such a simple thing. I really didn't think it'd have that reaction. One of my kids, I swear, went home that night, came in the next day and said, bought one. Because you can buy them on the White Rose website. They literally asked me in school, can we get them? Can you buy them? I was like, yeah, you can. They're quite expensive though. They're like £15 if you want to buy them. We got them for free because obviously we're huge influencers.
I think the term is edutocfluencers.
Edutocfluencers. And by we, I mean Dylan and I just kind of ride off of it. But he went over and bought one. He was like, it arrives on Monday. I was like, okay, well, bring in your Tiny. We're going to have a Tiny party. Honestly, I love it. Absolutely love it. But
that's so sweet. Oh, that's nice. Well, I'm glad we had a parallel experience and both did the exact same thing without even knowing.
Of course we did. Yeah, like these clothes we're wearing. It's not a surprise really at this point, surely, is it?
I just need to have the existential dread, and then we've got snaps 3 times.
Oh, what's that? Had children at the same time as well. Yep. Inspired by this podcast. Yep. Because we talked all the time and we decided we both want children at the same time. Yep. Don't know why, but there we are.
Both our children begin with R as well. Everyone asks, is that on purpose? No. Yes.
Not on purpose. We just think the same. How's your week been anyway, other than Tiny the Turtle?
Yeah, good. I suppose I just want to talk a little bit about, it's not an existential thing, but it's just a thing that really plays on my mind as a teacher in education. Because you think about why you get into teaching, right? And it's remember your why, and it's patronising when it makes you do
I'm sat there thinking, it's the money, baby.
It's the money, not. But genuinely, the reason you want to be a teacher is because you want to help the children. Yeah. That is the bottom line. You want to be able to do your job in a way which helps the next generation to understand things that are important and help them out and be that safe space for them. So I think this has been something on my mind, honestly, since day one. It wasn't something that I was a ECT and I wasn't sure, a newly qualified teacher, what this meant. From the start, it felt wrong. And it was this obsession that we have as teachers about data. Okay. So we can talk about that whole conversation about whether data is important or not and why it is and why it isn't sometimes. Let's just park that for a second. But I'm talking very specifically now. We create bars and levels to get to for our children to be able to say that this child is expected in maths.
Yeah.
This child is expected in English. And we say that's their age expectation. That's what we should be driving children towards. We are obsessed with it to the detriment of so many kids in our class. Because what ends up happening, and correct me if I'm wrong here, if your school does something different, but most schools are like this, and I can see why. You're in a pupil progress meeting, and you've got, let's say, 32 children in your class. And immediately what happens is you are forced to focus down and magnify on the children around this line that you've invented yourself to be age expected.
Right.
Okay. So let's say in maths, it's that they've got to do this specific standardized test and achieve this specific mark for you to be able to call this child expected in maths. Mm-hmm. You've already narrowed down what maths becomes then. Maths becomes them judging children on what they get in this test at the end. Mm-hmm. So you get rid of everything else to do with maths in terms of the problem solving, the investigations, getting things wrong, being resilient. None of that matters anymore. Mm-hmm. They've got to get here in a test. So that's already narrowed down, which annoys me. Then you look at your class and you can honestly narrow it down to like 6 kids who are on the cusp of this line.
Yeah.
And those 6 children then become your forced focus to get over that line. And what happens is the children who are past that line or have moved past that line in the year, suddenly they're like, cool, right, they're there. Forget about them. They're there now. Mm-hmm. That's fine. They've made this 2 points progress past the line. So that's okay. That's good.
Yeah.
Those kids who are just below the line, they're your focus. Those kids who are way back behind this imaginary line we put for age expected, they're never going to get there. So just plod along with them, I suppose, see where they get, but put your focus on these kids who are close to this line. And those kids way past the line who are pushing on to greater depth or getting full marks in their maths, cool, just let them crack on with that. That's great. They don't need as much support. And you become hyper-focused as a teacher, or forced to be anyway, on 20% of your kids.
Yeah.
And I absolutely hate it, because why on earth should a 10% move for those kids be worth more than a 30-40% move for your kids who are even lower, or a 10-20% move for your kids who are higher, simply because of this line that we've made up? It winds me up. It's not that progress isn't more important than the progress of everyone else. And I think in general, I think that I'm just fed up with constantly being given a brand new list of children who are just on the cusp of something that we've invented and we've said is important because of X, Y reason, just getting them past that line. It's like, do you know what? Do you know what I'm actually going to do? And I've done this for years and years now. I'm going to ignore that list and I'm just going to teach well and help every child who needs help. And if it comes to an intervention after a lesson, if there's a group of kids who don't understand why I did that lesson, I'm going to keep them in assembly time to do a bit of extra work for that lesson. I'm not going to go to my list and be like, oh, but I've got to make up something because this list of children needs some extra help. So I'm just going to ignore you guys who don't get it today. I'm going to get this list of 5 children and give them this thing because I need to get them past this imaginary line, please. I don't care. It is a detriment to my teaching.
Yeah. It's tricky. I think I'm so into the year 6 world that like hearing you say this is like a memory for me. It's like unlocking a memory. I feel like I've not lost my way, but I feel so indoctrinated into that game that it's kind of refreshing to hear this, because I remember thinking all of this. I remember thinking, this is mad. Why am I not just helping the lowest ability children at all times with any extra stuff I've got? Why am I ever if I've only got a small amount of resources to use, why am I not only helping the kids who don't get it the most?
The kids who can't add, maybe, because that's vitally important. But also, you're not helping the kids who are just okay.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing that gets forgotten all the time. If people have this conversation, they'll say what you say. I agree. I should be helping the lowest children. And my point is, yeah, you should. But do you know what you should also not do? Ignore every single child in your class.
Yeah.
Because just because they can do some maths now, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that their progress is less important.
Yeah.
I completely understand before someone gets annoyed at me and says, well, if you can't add, you've got to be able to add. Or if you can't read, you've got to be able to read. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not even doing that because I've got to get to this age expected line.
But these other middly kids.
How many kids in Key Stage 2 actually can't read? Do you know what I mean? Like, most kids can read. There are some children who can't. They need explicit intervention ASAP. But most kids who aren't at age expected level, they can read. Do you know what I mean? They can decode words. They're just not at the level at the test.
Bar that we've set.
Exactly. Not at that bar that we've set is important.
For that age.
I agree with what you're saying in terms of the lowest. But my point is everyone. I think 80% of kids can honestly get missed in a school because when you're so data driven by lines that we have literally invented ourselves.
Yeah. Especially when the lines are so arbitrary. Like, you're going back to your point about, test data, right? And it normally is, isn't it? Let's be honest. It's normally they need to achieve X amount of marks in a series of tests.
And for year 6, it's normally the SATs, which is standardized.
Yeah.
But even in the other year groups, it becomes whatever you pick as your end of year test.
Yeah, of course. So, which is even worse. But even with year 6 alone, right? One of my biggest pet peeves is the fact that when you put just a mark threshold on a test, it does mean that there are now infinite ways for someone to get there, and it doesn't really value like what being a good mathematician is, for example. Sure. Right? You could get honestly, and it's going to sound horrible, you could get a terrible mathematician through the SATs.
Yeah.
Because you know what? You could look at it. You look at the analysis. Again, Sophie does all the analysis every year, doesn't she? And there's loads of great insights. You can see. I think she does it through Learning by Questions and other websites.
It's really good stuff.
But you can look at that and be like, oh, so you can pass these tests just knowing fractions, decimals, and percentages, and arithmetic. Okay, cool. 80% of the curriculum then, not going to teach that.
Yeah.
And it's like, Okay, so they would get through and they would be expected, but are they a good mathematician? Absolutely not. By any other metric, no, they're not.
Yeah.
Well, they don't even know what algebra is. Well, how can you say they're age expected? Well, because they passed this test. Okay, well, we've got very different ideas then of what we think a good mathematician is by the time you're 11, don't we? If you think that passing that test is it, and I think actually just knowing a bit more about the measurement and geometry and shape and
time.
Algebra and time, I think they need to know a bit of all of that actually to be considered even at a base level of good at maths.
Yeah, but no, it's a percentage point at the end. That is what it becomes, and it winds me up slightly. Because I can see the trap happening. I think that's why it winds me up even more.
Yeah.
I can see why people go down this route. And I completely understand it. But for me, it's especially in those years other than year 6. I get why when it comes to the SATs, it's your headline data in your league tables for your school. I completely understand it. I'm not digging out any leadership team who think that's important. I get it. But it's just frustrating and a bit mind-numbing when it happens in year 3 and it happens in year 4. And it's an end-of-year assessment test that you've chosen. You could have chosen from 57 different tests that you've done. The line could have been slightly different all the time. And it becomes... annoyingly lower down in the school, like you say, you look at it and you go, okay, let's stick with maths, for example. You could get a mathematician who you've drilled to be really good at arithmetic, and arithmetic's really important, don't get me wrong. I focus on arithmetic with my children because I know it's what they need to be able to do every single time. And we do some reasoning and problem solving. We do reasoning all the time, but we do problem solving, I'd say, less frequently than other children might, simply because we're spending so much time getting better at the actual fluency. Exactly. But I can get children through to expected, year 4 level, by getting them to be 36 out of 40 or more. And then just doing the reasoning and problem solving paper and kind of getting like 5 out of 30.
Getting a few of the easy ones, right?
A few of the easy ones, where they got to match up some place value. At no point have they got any of the, complicated two-step word problems, right? None of the measuring stuff, right? The fraction stuff, they're honestly working like 20-30% of the problem solving bits because it's hard. Anything that combines it or looks at shape, for example, I'll just have a go, see what you get. But at the end, it will say expected.
And you know what? And you'll get a pat on the back.
Exactly. And then someone who's expected right at the top end of expected, who got so many more of those questions right, is still just expected.
Who knows a lot more about a wider range of areas in maths.
Who is a much better mathematician. But do you know what? The child who's just below expected and the child who's just above expected, they should be getting the same intervention and help. Because what's currently happening is the child who's just above expected and the child who's at the top of expected are seen as expected, both put in the same category. No, you don't need any extra help. They are so much more different than the ones either side of this arbitrary line that we've made up. And that's the trap we fall in as teachers all the time. And this is a very long-winded way of me saying that this is how data drives bad practice.
It's so funny that you mentioned this as your kind of like your weekly recap, because one of my questions later in the sort of main bulk is related to that. So we'll come back to that. When I say it, you'll be like, oh yeah, this is very linked to something I'm going to ask you about simplicity and about losing our way as teachers and the purpose of things. So do stick around for that conversation because it should be a good one.
And you've actually planned a podcast episode for the first time in I think nearly 100. So that's well done.
Not 100 yet because we're only on episode 98.
Okay.
Shut up.
Right. I want to be riled up by you.
Okay? Oh, do you?
I want you to,
that's good because I've got that ready.
You've got a little rile up for me ready. It's a section that's becoming a bit more frequent.
It's just funny.
You seem to really revel in it, and unbelievably, like I said, it's making you prepare stuff for the podcast.
It is, and I'm desperate for you to embarrass yourself.
Okay,
do you know, I'm desperate for you to say, I'm desperate for you to get so passionate that you embarrass yourself, and we all go, haha, look at you.
Yeah, and you want me to get cancelled, so you get a new presenter in,
probably Sophie the robot. Yeah, and we'll crack on.
I don't know who'll be planning it then,
and we'll make this podcast good.
Yeah, okay.
We'll run our socials. Whatever.
Right, come on. What's the context here? Just online forum again?
Just online. I just see things online all the time, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Interesting question there. It's always anonymous, so I don't know who these people are. Someone said they've got year group meetings during PPA. Just wait, because I know you're already. I can already see you seething.
Okay.
Year group meetings during PPA at my school. We're regularly directed to do certain tasks in that time. I've never been too bothered because I felt like if we didn't do it then, we'd only have to do it after school anyway.
That does come into it.
Which is a fair point. Or during lunch or something like that. However, it occurred to me today that this does mean that the meetings don't show up as directed time in our calendar.
Right.
It's hidden. Recently, we've been also directed to do tasks in the morning of our PPA. So I don't always have time to do what I actually planned to do in the spare time in my PPA after this meeting. And it's beginning to annoy me. I don't know what I should do. What should I do?
Well, I'm going to call you out immediately on something you did last week, which was when you mentioned the 4-day week thing. You said there's a school who's gone to 4 days a week and teachers get the 5th day off. And I was like, well, it's not off because they've got to do work. They get the 5th day to do work they've got to do.
Yeah, sure.
So when we're talking about PPA, I think so many of these problems stem from the idea that it's off, the idea that it's a favor. Right? we had a comment this week about how someone said, I did something about how PPA should be flexible, should be able to take it from home, blah, blah, blah. Someone commented really annoyed saying, oh, teachers never bloody think about who's covering their PPA, do they? They always just desperately obsessed with wanting their PPA, and whoever's covering it, who's thinking about the children and their safety and the HLTAs who have to cover it. And I was like, yeah, that's not our problem. I'm sorry. I'm sure you've got some very adequate grievances that are fine.
Yeah.
It's not our problem though. And if you're scrambling to cover for PPA every week, that's an SLT problem.
Yeah, and your school problem, to be honest with you.
Exactly that, because 99% of schools, from what I've heard, have a bit of a system in place, at least for PPA, and it is sacred. Yeah. Anyway, this PPA is being used incorrectly. Do you know what I mean? This person has to go to their union and say something, because PPA is not time off. PPA is not a favor. PPA is not something where you can go, well, it's okay, actually they've got PPA that day, so I'm sure they won't mind doing a meeting. Oh, I'll just book in a parent meeting that day because there's PPA, there's some free time.
They've got time.
It's not free time. Let me make this extremely clear. The amount of work teachers have to do outside of the classroom just to be able to deliver their work in the classroom in the first place is much more than the time they're allocated for that planning, preparation and assessment in their PPA time. So anything you put into PPA that takes time away from your teachers being able to do that is adding time onto the teacher's free time where they'll have to complete that work. If you have 4 hours of work a week to do outside of the classroom and you get 2 hours of PPA, you get 2 hours you've got to do outside of the classroom. Completely normal, often more. If you put an hour meeting in that PPA, guess what? That 4 hours of work still has to get done. So that is an extra hour now that I've got to do at the weekend. It's not acceptable. It's not fine. PPA is sacred. And the only thing we should be working towards as a whole staff is not gaslighting teachers into thinking they're the problem because they want their PPA protected. It's actually working together with teachers to try and make whatever extra work they've got to do outside of the classroom actually fit into that time we're given to do the job. So stop putting the onus on teachers for wanting their PPA time to be sacred and to have at least 10%, by the way, not any less, because an afternoon is often not even 10% because the morning's so much longer. But we should be working together to make it work. Stop gaslighting teachers. Stop making them feel bad. It's not time off. It's time they literally need to be able to deliver the bulk of their job that's really important.
Wow. Well, thank you, Shakespeare. That was a monologue and a half, that was, wasn't it? Crikey. Really good. Yeah, very interesting. I totally agree. But what would you say to the one point in there which I thought was very, I can see where teachers would think, which was about the meetings being other times. So the meeting in PPA, he was like, or she, I don't know who his person was, if I don't do it now, I only have to do it another time anyway.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? If you've got year group meeting, not a staff meeting.
Yeah. If you've got to meet with your year group for whatever reason, it does make sense to do it in PPA.
Yeah.
Right? But that has to be a decision that you will make. Okay. I remember I worked in a school once where it was from the top down, you have to have a year group meeting every week.
Yep.
And it was 1 hour. And 1 hour, and it was after school. And that was on top of your hour a week of training. That is completely wrong. That is not something that I think is acceptable, because you're putting the onus on and you've got to do an hour meeting. Okay. What it should be is just you're working with your year group team as a teacher who's doing their planning, preparation and assessment. If you and your team decide that it's beneficial to get together to help with that planning, because then it's more efficient, we're all on the same page, maybe you're sharing planning, so you end up doing less anyway. There should be no time on it. We often meet with our year group in PPA for honestly 10 minutes or less at the start of every PPA. It's almost like let's get our heads together. We don't often get time to sit in the same room because we're so busy teaching. Let's get our heads together. Any notices we need to know about.
Yeah.
And if I don't know about it, it will have much of a detrimental impact later. I'm completely I want those meetings. I want to use my PPA for that because it helps me.
Yeah.
When it becomes just simply, well, SLT have given us an agenda that we've got to get through because we're a year group meeting and we have to do it in our PPA, that's when it becomes wrong. And if at any point, right, I could go to my head of year and I could say, I'm so sorry. I'm completely swamped. I've been asked to do this. I'm just going to crack on with this. Could you please just email me these points?
Yeah.
Do you know what my year group leader would say? Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, no of course. Because it's PPA and it's not directed. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not
directed. I agree. I think it'd be an interesting thought experiment. Having worked in a school that also did an hour very set hour, rigid, you have to do a year group meeting, and now working in a school where the year group meetings they're not even talked about. They're just, some people do and some people don't. It doesn't even matter. They're just not a thing, right? I'd like to do a thought experiment with people maybe that do have that set time. Maybe it's an hour, maybe it's half an hour, but whatever, a set time a week where it's like you have to have a year group meeting. How much of that year group meeting could be scrapped? How much of that year group meeting could honestly just turn into a passing conversation in the corridor? How much of that year group meeting could just be an email from your head of year? And I because my personal feeling is, having gone from a school that did it to a school that didn't do it, I don't feel like I've lost anything.
Yeah.
Every single thing we did in those year group meetings, I now just do. I'll just do it in the morning, walking past. Oh, have you done this thing for today? Oh yeah, thanks for reminding me on that. Spend 5 minutes in the morning. There you go. It's added into my little list. That's fine. I've done that now. 3 days later. At lunchtime.
Yeah.
Oh, did you see that? Or did I put it through? I emailed it to you. Oh yeah, I'll go and check it out later. I'll do it this afternoon.
Yeah.
It just turns into like part of the job. It doesn't need to be me wasting an hour of my PPA or wasting an hour after school.
Yeah.
I reckon I can't imagine there's many of you out there, if you are doing it an hour year group meeting, that disagree with that and think no, we definitely, that hour is essential, that I sit there exclusively doing that for an hour. I doubt it.
No, I completely agree, and I think it has to come from the teacher. Is it useful for the teachers? If the answer is yes, then cool. And if it becomes scatty, like you're saying, in terms of, I can imagine that can become quite a scatty situation where things are forgotten.
Yeah, sure.
Use email.
Yeah,
honestly, just do bullet point email, or have have some kind of notice board. Genuinely, in your year group, have some notice board. Maybe it's in your year group leader's classroom.
Yeah,
whatever it might be, or in your shared area if you've got one. Just have a way of just writing things down where you don't all have to be in the same room for half an hour. You know, it can just be like, oh, I've updated the board or sent an email or we've got this to do. I think there's ways around it.
And then if something is essential, guess what? In PPA, you just do what you did. You just spend 3 minutes talking to your team.
Yeah.
If you need to.
Which as teachers, we're not against that.
Doesn't matter.
We're not against that.
Yeah. Anyway, so there we go. I thought that was an interesting one. But yeah, I think protect your PPA time, fight for it.
Yeah.
My advice would be if they have something to say about that, of you saying, oh, actually, it's undirected time, then you're in a toxic school. So at that point, don't care about it. Just do what you need to do at that point. If they're toxic, then don't care about their feelings because they don't care about yours. So just fight the fight.
That's the way to do it.
There we are. Anyway, you've been saying to me all week about some stories on Instagram.
Yeah.
Have you got them?
Well, basically, since we've had the big boom in numbers in the last few weeks, so has the amount of messages that we've been getting.
Right.
And I think these two messages perfectly summarize something we said last week, which was how schools are so different. So I'm going to read them out. There's two here. Here's the first one, showing how schools can be amazing.
Okay, all right.
So just listening to this week's podcast, I really want to share what my school are doing. Last year, my school implemented a whole day of PPA from home, and then have continued it this academic year. On that day, children do forest school, PE, and art. Really great for the kids, I think.
Yeah.
They have invested money in an art studio with an art specialist teacher.
What?
Our head teacher told us this at the time. Use this day off to ensure your well-being is taken care of. As long as you get the work done, because you're professionals, and I trust you, do what you like. If you want to work late 3 evenings a week and have the day off, then just do that. If you want to take your kids to Chessington for the day and then work on Sunday, do that. If you want to use it to ensure you do not work at the weekends, do that as well.
Wow.
As well as this, we get subject release time twice a term, separate to these PPA days. I'm not going to say it's been complete magic and it's just completely fixed education, but my goodness, it's been refreshing to work in a school where you're actually treated like professionals and trusted to do your job.
We need more. If you work in a school like this, please write in more, because I tell you what, it gives me hope. I sometimes feel like there's no hope.
Yeah.
And hearing that makes me feel giddy. I feel so good because I'm like, oh my God, there's a head teacher out there that's doing the thing that I said I would do if I was a head teacher.
Yeah.
Someone's doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is so exciting.
And do you know what? Someone summed it up. I can't remember where I saw this the other day. And it was saying that teachers are not selfish creatures. The more you give to teachers, the more they will give you back.
Yeah.
If you invest like this in your teaching staff, your children will get more out of it and it will be a better school in general.
Yeah.
One thing to add to this.
Incredible.
Because afterwards, you know, I've got, let's say a bee in my bonnet, but about academy trusts. And I thought, you know what, to be fair, this sounds like something an academy trust could do because they've got the big budget. Maybe everyone goes on about how it's economies of scale, etc. She messaged after to say she's also working for a local authority school. It's not
so
a trust.
That is not a
So
trust.
it is not a trust. It's not something sat there going, well, I'll see what we can do. Yeah, we can do it. Wherever we're at. It doesn't have to be part of a trust where the CEO is taking 20% of the budget.
You'd expect the caveat to be, and we get all this because they don't pay any of the staff correctly, so we've got this budget to have this art studio. But that is another thing, though. In the dream world, we'd all have the budget to have an art studio and a forest school and specialist teachers to come and do that. Most local authority schools don't have it. I don't know why. I don't know how budgeting works, but I reckon that's not a reality for a lot. But it is a reality for somewhere, so there must be a way to make that happen.
Yeah, so it really is incredible. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I can breathe. Because
are you all right?
My nose currently has what feels like a valve at the top because I can't breathe properly. So anyone listening, I'm so sorry if I sound like a machine malfunctioning. So we've got that. I read that and I was like, do you know what? I've got hope. What an amazing thing for our education system. Then I went to TikTok and had another message from someone. Very, very much, by the way, appreciate you sending this message. I appreciate all messages, but when they're a bit more... this is a bad thing that happened to me. I do appreciate someone putting their heart on the sleeve like that. So thank you. Obviously going to remain anonymous. Okay. I was a student in what I thought was a fantastic school. And I even went to this primary school and knew how good it was. I was successful in a job interview. And unfortunately, due to a number of factors, I was left as an ECT as leader of supply. So sorting out all supply, as well as being given a subject responsibility of maths. Something at the time that he thought was an amazing privilege. And you can frame it in a way for a new teacher like, wow, you're in charge of maths. However, obviously by the end, he knew what was happening. He was also seen as the young one. So any IT problems came straight to him. And as a result, was also given IT coordinator.
Oh my God.
So a brand new teacher, given maths lead, huge job.
Yeah.
ICT lead, just because they can unplug a HDMI cable. And also then leader of supply and helping his other ECTs as well. Okay, huge responsibilities. So at 21 years of old, he was head of maths, head of computing, head of PE, and unit leader for 2 other ECTs, as well as being one himself. In his first year, he had a verbal altercation with a parent when the mother of the child in question said, "Effing pointless and useless, why the F are you a teacher?" Which then led to her coming into the playground and out of nowhere, slapping/punching a closed fist kind of slap in the face.
No.
I don't want to put future teachers off because it is fun in so many ways. And when it's fun, it's amazing. But something has to change, doesn't it?
I can't fathom that.
There's so much to unpack.
Firstly, is he the only teacher at this school? Doing every job.
I know. Apart from the other 2 ECTs who's in charge.
Yeah, of course. Oh my God, that's insane. Like, no wonder people quit.
Do you not see the two like prongs there? In terms of how amazing schools are, the first school, unbelievable. The way that school treated their new staff.
Yeah.
Like, don't you think? I think personally, when you're in ECT, because it's a 2-year thing now, those 2 years should be spent either shadowing someone to learn what they're doing maybe in a role. They want to be maths lead one day. Cool, shadow the actual maths lead then.
Yeah.
Just shadow them. And learning to teach. Get better at teaching.
God. They were obviously desperate for filling these roles for whatever reason.
But why? Doesn't that say something?
Yeah, it's almost ironic, isn't it? Because clearly it's the fact that they did that to that ACT probably shows why they didn't have a maths lead in the first place. Because people clearly don't want to work to a place like that. And if you know what, with the parent thing, that is rubbish, but it's kind of like that's a little bit more out of your control in terms of you can't change the catchment that you're in, if you know what I mean. You can help to uplift the area, but like the catchment, like what I'm trying to say here is it's so vastly different where you end up working, what kind of catchment you're in and what kind of parents you might be serving.
Oh yeah, but I think you can get parents like that wherever, just unhinged parents who are so entitled.
Yeah, of course.
I remember working in quite an affluent area and I had parents who were on at me more than ever, constantly saying, well, why aren't you doing this for my child? Why aren't you doing that for my child? My child should get this, my child should get that. And I get why parents defend their children and treat teachers like rubbish. But I'm not blaming the school. To close fist someone hit like this, but the school should then be absolutely on it immediately on your side, banning that person, getting the authorities involved.
I'm hoping they did that.
Yeah, well, at the time, this guy was saying how he just wasn't in a position where he felt confident to even bring it up.
That's disgusting then. That is disgusting. Like, because you didn't mention that, I just assumed in that part the best happened. Yeah. I'm assuming that parent was banned from the school.
Yeah.
But maybe not. That would be honestly disgusting. At that point, I'm like, okay, get police involved. That's mental. Literally. That's not even like a school thing anymore. You've been assaulted by another person. That is ridiculous. Yeah. I feel sorry for that person. Go and work in the other school that we had in the first story.
But doesn't that just show, in general, I know there's more to that story, but the point of being the difference in schools.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can go from one school to another. You've got 74 different pieces of workload to do on top of just learning how to be a teacher. And then the other one, you've got a head teacher going, do you want to go to Chessington on Friday?
Paid the same. Mad. Broken job.
Absolutely. Crazy. But anyway, I just thought I'd show you that. I thought it was very interesting. Yeah. Shall we get into the main bulk of this episode? You have been doing a lot of thinking about simplicity and how it seems to be missing from our education system.
So funnily enough, earlier on in the podcast, I said, oh, Dylan, you've mentioned something that I'm going to ask you later. And my first question in this whole idea of simplicity and have teachers lost their way, right, which is the kind of overarching question I've got here, is about people quitting. which we know is terrible right now, retention's awful, are people leaving this job because we've lost our purpose? And earlier on, you mentioned about the whole testing thing and setting imaginary bars. Do you think that is either a big reason or the biggest reason that teachers just don't want to do this job anymore?
I think it's a big reason. I don't know if it's the biggest. I think when a teacher quits, it's for a big reason. And that big reason is usually a combination of stuff. So I very rarely see a teacher who's quit because of one thing. I see a teacher who goes, I didn't want to quit, but X, Y, Z. Like all of these things added up and just culminated in me leaving. I think this is a big part of it.
Yeah.
I think this idea of just doing stuff because it's the stuff we're told we have to do by ourselves. Like the amount of stuff that is like, well, the policy says that we need to be doing this. I was like, so yeah, who wrote the policy? We did. Why don't you change the policy then? Because every single person in this room knows that what you're asking me to do is completely pointless. But we all justify it by saying, well, it's just what we've got to do. Because we decided we've got to do it.
Mad.
What can we all just wake up for a second? I feel like in a school that happens so much. Change what we've got to do then, because we're in control of it. We don't need to do it anymore.
That's circular thinking, isn't it? Like completely insular, circular thinking. We have to because we made this rule. Who made the rule? We did.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Exactly, can we change? Yeah. I mean, I've heard you say it in staff. Yeah. Can we change the rule then?
Yeah.
Can we change the bar? Can we change the policy?
I'm so fed up because I'm doing all this and no one else isn't. Do you use what you're doing? Like, do you use that sheet you're filling in every time you do something? No. But we've got to. Who said we've got to? The English lead. Who's the English lead? Someone down there who also doesn't do
Me. It's like, what? Oh, man. Yeah. So that thought train that you kind of explored earlier is kind of the inspiration I had for this episode, which is about losing our purpose and teachers wanting to quit this job. Is it because of that simplicity? Is it because we've become too complex? We've made too many imaginary bars. There's just so much going on. And we also, speaking to, we're mentioning Sophie a lot in this episode. Right? Sophie, just like clearly she's we're your biggest fan.
Virtual podcast host right now.
Yeah.
And in spirit.
Yeah, she is our AI because of course she's a robot. And she mentioned this article from 2017 that we'd never read. And I was quite surprised because apparently it was huge. And it was called The Extraordinary Case of Mr. Yamazaki by Solomon Kingsnorth.
Great name.
Fantastic name.
It's a pseudonym, apparently.
Unfortunately.
But if there is someone out there called Solomon Kingsnorth, get in touch because that is the best name I've ever heard. Honestly.
It really is.
Can you imagine being called Solomon King? What's your name? Solomon. Solomon?
Ooh.
Solomon who? Solomon Kingsnorth. I'd listen to that guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd follow that guy.
On to the actual article though. So we will link this down below. Do actually give it a proper read because it was genuinely like fascinating. We were in awe reading this whole thing. Yeah. But we're just going to go over some of the key points from it. And the whole point of this article is to highlight how simple things could be. Yeah. And I guess ironically spotlight how complex we've made it, how overcomplicated the job of teaching and just education, teaching and learning has become. Yeah. So let's go over some of the key points. Now,
and by the way, if you're listening, stick to the end. There is an unbelievable twist at the end. Like it's like it blew my mind at the end.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. Do stick around. So in this school, which is a through school, so it's not a junior school, it's reception all the way to year 6, right? Primary school. In the first year, they have stripped back the curriculum to just 2 objectives. So in reception, Dylan, what do these children focus on?
It's incredible. When I read this, learning the alphabet by sight and handwriting and counting to 20 and back. That's it. It's not even an idea that a child can leave reception and not be able to do these 2 things.
Yeah.
Because in the current system, like you said, of things sitting on top of each other all the time, these 2 things actually, this head teacher has decided that's what I want my children to do at the end of reception. And apart from that, they do loads of informal learning. No formal learning apart from that. It's all play. Yeah. And it's not even learning through play. You know, it's not got your clipboard out and they're at this station because there's 5 stations set up and I've got to make sure, you're pretending to be a vet. I'm going to tick off that you're talking. No. Just play.
Yeah.
Just play. And that is it. And stories.
Yeah. Stories are the big one.
Yeah. And the vocab is built through stories. The UK average for reception child is 1,500 to 1,600 words. This can significantly increase children's vocab to 3.8 to 4.2 thousand. You can more than double it just from having play and stories at the center of everything alongside counting to 20 back and learning the alphabet. So once they've done that in reception, they move to year 1 in this school. And in year 1, it's seen as the most vital year. Every single bit of resources put into year 1 because the idea is that later on in the school, if these foundations are solid, you can add stuff quickly because they've already got those foundations in place. So why is year one important in this case?
I mean, I've always thought this anyway. So reading this, I was like, yes, because I think the lower down is more important for those foundations. Just a quick segue, because how many times in upper school have you encountered a child who is significantly behind in their ability to read and do basic numeracy, right? And you look back, if you look back at that journey, you think, oh, well, I'm sure we did everything we could, though, to get them there. And you go, oh, no, they spent this much time learning about the Mayans. They did this much time learning about these other things. And I'm not saying these subjects are bad, but there's a point where I'm like, should they just have focused on these extremely essential foundations?
Or more importantly, in maths, should they have not gone on to 17 other things before they can do that? Because I still think learning about different cultures is so important. And in this school, they're still learning about the Mayans. Yeah. It's just in story time in the afternoon. They're still doing history. It's just in story time. It's built into narratives, which the human mind is wired to take in. It's not wired to take in 6 individual lessons about Mayans where we're talking about how the community has changed over time. Just with these young kids. These children in this school, according to this article, can recite you this unbelievable historical story about how a whole culture was founded because they did it for a story. Great. And then in maths, do you know what? They're not going to learn what a fraction is until year 5 because there's no point. Can they do these things? Yeah. Don't oversaturate it. Still do maths, still do history, still do geography, but at the level what's important for them.
Get rid of those imaginary bars. You can learn fractions in a fraction of the time when you are 10 years old compared to trying to learn it when you're 6.
And you still don't really know your multiplication.
Yeah, it's like, just leave it. Do they need to know it? Seriously, if you really think about it, most of the curriculum, how much do they need to know at 8?
Yeah.
Does it matter if they learn it at 10?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what are they doing? Are they going to get a job at 8, are they? Or they're not going to get that 8-year-old job now if they don't know it now, though. No, just as long as before they're 16, honestly, just let them learn it at some point. Maybe let their brain develop, then teach them this thing. It'll be it's so much easier. It's mad what we do with our
So in year 1, what are the 3 learning objectives? Because there's 3 now. Oh, be careful.
Yeah, that's a lot.
What's the 3 in year 1?
So reading and writing every phoneme and grapheme.
Okay, brilliant.
Simple, right? Counting to 110 and back.
Yep.
And finally, mastering all number bonds to 20. That includes not just like knowing number bonds to 20, it includes number bonds to 19, number bonds to 18, 17, 16, all the way down.
So knowing what 9 plus 6 is.
Yeah, exactly, straight away. All of your 1-digit number bond facts off by heart. And that's it. So no extended writing or unnecessary subjects at this point. Yep. It is just mastering the basics. And again, using storytelling, using stories to enrich their idea of the world.
Exactly.
That's fine at this point.
Exactly. That. It doesn't have to be a formal, you've got a history book, we're writing down fill in the blanks in this sentence because the sentence your teacher just told you. Let them explore, let them have stories. Do you know, at this point, I was reading through and then we was through the rest of the article, it told through the rest of the school, has interviews with the head teacher himself. And I was so inspired. I was so inspired. And this guy's basically come in and completely challenged all this traditional UK primary education. Yeah. This model of just like, well, we've got to make sure we're always assessing children all the time. Because we've got to write this down on this piece of paper. And if they can't do this, then obviously they're not age expected and we need to make sure they can do that. And it's at the detriment of everything else. Strip it back. Unbelievable. Outcomes were better. I was ready to be completely converted. And then you messaged me.
And we found out, what did I message you, Dylan? What did I message you?
This is a fictional piece.
I was like, no. Yeah.
But the point of the fictional piece of work was to have this impact. And it was to make this point that we're going to talk about now. Simplicity is lost.
Yeah.
And actually, it was about overload. If I was to summarize the issue, or one of the biggest issues, there's several, with teaching and education right now, it is overload. It is always what more can our kids do? We need to make the day at school longer because we can't fit everything in. I promise you, if we make the day at school longer, we'll fit it and we'll have more stuff to fit in. Simplicity. Strip it back. Less is more.
Yeah.
So you've come up with some points.
Yeah. So the whole thing just inspired me. It made me think of some questions, and I thought I was going to ask you at the time, and I thought, no, I'm going to be clever and save it for the podcast and ask what your opinions are. So my first question to you, because of this overcomplication, which you've just highlighted, do you think education has actually got worse for children?
No. I think education is way better than if you look at the 70s and 80s. And I think it's really, really, really easy to forget that. I think a child's education right now in school is so much better than it was because we were so driven by the fact that standards were so bad back then. And when people say, yeah, we used to just sit and behave in class. Yeah, because you had to, because someone would throw a board rubber at you. They'd throw a board rubber at your head if you didn't. Okay, we don't have that anymore. In general, yes. However, I think we've gone way too far down the route of test data, getting people through certain things and covering as much as we possibly can to cram it in, because back then there was no national curriculum and kids just did artsy fartsy things, but enjoyed it, by the way. Kids just did little artsy fartsy things all day. And now it's like, no, we need to make sure kids are getting all of this. And they are definitely getting a better deal for that. But it's gone too far. So in terms of, is it worse over time? Probably not worse. But it could be so much better. And we're at the point now, the nexus, I think, where it is becoming worse because we're so obsessed with more.
Yeah.
So I think it's easy for someone to sit here and be like, it's worse than ever. It's not.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Yeah.
But it could be so much better for the kids.
You're kind of thinking on a bit of a macro level there as well, aren't you? Like you're thinking like overall.
Yeah, overall
right?
It's way better.
So let's granularize it. Granularize it, that's a word. I made that up. A little bit, right?
Maybe you need to do some more English literacy skills.
Yeah, clearly. My education was not good enough. I should be in today's education, actually. Thank you. I'd have learned that at 3 years old. But if we think about just something, because I was trying to think about this question, right? Because I've been asked that loads of times, and I'll always say what you say. I'm like, no, at the end, I moan about things, but education for kids is better. But then I do think that, am I falling into the trap as well, though, of being like, yeah, I think it's better by the metric standards, the standards that we have set. Because when I think about stuff that maybe used to be valued more that isn't valued anymore, stuff like mental math skills, it just isn't valued anymore. Oracy skills. I saw that come up on Teacher Tap this week, and I was like, oh yeah, oracy. It was asking, does your school do this? I was like, no, I don't know anyone that does oracy anywhere. And just other life skills in general, do you feel like that they're just like, have they got worse? And if they've got worse, is it because we don't think they matter anymore? Or I don't know, it made me, like, my mindset shift.
Do you know what? Stuff normally gets worse because there's less time to do it. Very rarely does stuff get worse just because. So when we're thinking about like oracy skills and mental strategies, 100% they've got worse than when we were at school. Mental strategies for us, we looked at SATS papers from like 2000, 2004, that era when we were taking them. And a lot of them were way more reliant on mental strategies. And I think mental strategies have got way worse in maths. Oracy skills have got way worse in English because we've been cramming it in with, well, who needs oracy skills anymore? Because you need to tell me what a determiner is.
That's what I mean.
What's a determiner? So yeah, I completely understand what you mean. There are certain things that are getting worse, absolutely. And it is because of the lack of time put towards doing them, because it's way more complicated than ever and we're trying to cram more in. And we are prioritizing the wrong things. Like, honest to God, for a child in a primary school, how much more important is it that they know their number bonds within 20 than it is that they can identify an adverb in a sentence? Do you know what? Identifying an adverb in a sentence is almost completely pointless. It's completely pointless. Okay, I'm just thinking about it. Can I say it's completely pointless? Yeah, I can. Because do you know what? Do you know how many kids, if they're doing really good oracy skills, would be saying adverbs and putting it in their work anyway? It doesn't matter if they can't. I was a teacher. I had to teach myself what adverbs were at the start. Does that not say something? Like, I could write whole essays, and I went through a whole history degree. I wrote a dissertation on African history.
Went to grammar school.
I went to grammar school. It was absolutely fine. No matter what the situation, you go, oh, but to be highly educated, you must be able to tell me where the determiners are in the sentence. No, you don't. You have to do that because we have to tick boxes to get through tests and things like that. And that's the harsh reality.
And those metrics go up, which is why I feel like it's easy to justify, education is getting better, look, because they know what determiners are now. And my overall point here is like, but do these things really matter? What do we actually think is a good education? Because I'm starting to like doubt myself and starting to think, I actually think education is maybe getting a little bit worse. It's just that the metrics we put in place, they go up. But I don't value them very much, really, when I really think about it. I'm like, actually, no, if kids are worse at speaking and doing mental maths, education's got worse, in my opinion. I don't know. I think there's space for that argument.
I think you got a really good point.
Second point, again, inspired by this article, and again, inspired by you as well, really talking about it earlier.
Oh, thank you.
Well, not really, because I pre-planned it, but I'll pretend for your sake. Teaching. Is it less enjoyable than ever before?
So what, in terms of the lack of simplicity?
Yeah, because our jobs, so I'm sort of moving away from the kids a little bit now and just thinking about the complexity of teaching. Because like you said, there's so much stuff. We mentioned last week about being overwhelmed with a million different options of how to do things. Do you think that makes teaching less enjoyable, or is it the other stuff we mentioned?
It's part of it, for sure. All you need to do is talk to a teacher who's been in the job for more than 20 years, and they will all say the same thing. Oh, teaching is not what it used to be. And there's a reason for that. It's because they used to come in, right? And we can think back to when we were in school ourselves. I feel like there was way more time when I was in year 5, year 6, where we do like project work, we'd do like a whole project on the Romans, and it was the best thing I've ever done ever. And I'd spend an afternoon doing a front cover of a Roman soldier.
Yes.
And then I spend the next afternoon doing an acrostic poem, right? And I spend the afternoon after just looking for a Roman textbook and copying like the weaponry down and doing like an inventory.
Oh God, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, do you know what? Is that? Oh, but we didn't write down how the democracy of the time was changing because of the comparisons between people beforehand. When you're 9, you couldn't care less.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean education is better now.
Yeah.
It just means that I'm less involved. I'm less enthused. And from a teacher's point of view, I see children less enthused than ever. And I'm relying on children who are infused by learning full stop to carry the class more than ever.
Yeah.
There's always going to be children who, it doesn't matter what you do, like that story I said earlier when we did a lesson on longitude and latitude, the most boring lesson I've ever done in my life. And there were 1 or 2 kids in there who were like, this is so interesting, isn't this fun? And I was relying on them to carry the whole class of 32 kids who I'm with on my own doing 2 hours of latitude. And you've just got to look at yourself in that moment and go, what am I doing? What am I doing? We could be doing so much more fun, really cool stuff with the children right now. And that's what I feel like what it used to be. And I think the reason why is because we're being told from the top down, you need to make sure you've got all the progress in all the things all of the time. You need to be able to write it down. You need to be able to assess them all the time. What's your teacher assessment for this children in this one thing about longitude and latitude? Because when it comes to year 5, the teacher's going to be looking back at this sheet and seeing where they were in that, and they're going to be informing that. No, they're not.
Yeah.
Do some teaching. It will stick for some kids. It won't stick for others. Do it again next year when you do geography again. It will stick for more. By the time they're 16, do you know what? They might know what longitude and latitude is. Some of them might not, and they'll be fine.
Yeah, because they'll never use it because they're not interested in it. They won't. They're not going to go and get a job in that field. It's fine.
Yeah,
whatever.
It should just be about creativity and enjoyment. Because yes, English being able to read and maths being able to add and tell the time and stuff like that. They're the core things that have no negotiating around them. The rest of maths and English and the whole of everything else should be about enrichment, enjoyment, inspiring.
I have such fond memories. You talking about primary school then? I have such fond memories of primary school, and every single one of those memories is through doing enriching tasks. It's through doing practical things. It's through looking at stuff and making booklets, like you said. And I am really worried, and I've been worried about this for years. And it genuinely makes me feel strange because I feel like I'm contributing to it. Implicitly, I have to. Is that I just think kids are so much less happy. There's just, like, compared to even just when we were kids, which, you know, you could go back even more generations. Maybe it's different. I don't know. Maybe we had the peak time, which I think there's a good argument for, by the way, like 90s and early 2000s. I think there's a good argument for that being like peak enjoyment for kids at school. Yeah. But I am genuinely really concerned that kids are so unhappy now, on average, compared to 20 years ago at school. And we are just doubling down on that. And like, we are half the problem. I think half the problem is outside of school. I think it's social media and all those sorts of things. Yeah. Those massive influences that are just ruining our brain, are rotting our brains. Do you know what I mean? And we don't know about them yet. It's not been long enough. We'll look back in 100 years and be like, whoa.
Can't believe kids had that.
The old brain rot generation. Look at them all now in their 70s. Like, completely, you know, I think we might look back. But there's another part, which is specifically our fault.
We have control
as
over.
Educators, not not on like a granular level, but as education, where it's too complex and we value the wrong things. You know, like that first question I asked you, we've lost sight of oracy skills and life skills and having fun and enjoying school. It's not about enjoying school; it's about meeting standards. That's it.
I had so many people comment on stuff recently because I spoke about how we don't value stuff like English and maths, and so many people took that as, what do you mean you don't value being able to read? Oh, well, when there's a job asking for a GCSE in PE, maybe then that'll get some. And it's like, are you that dumb that you can't see through exactly what I'm saying? Do I need to explain it to you completely what I obviously mean by that? Do you think as a teacher that I don't think being able to read is the most important thing in the world? Can you just for a second think honestly? Just maybe you needed more English. Maybe that was the problem because you can't infer anything. But the point was, just because I value the fact that kids should be able to read and write and stuff, I'm not saying that that's not important, or I'm not saying that being able to run a lap is just as important as being able to read. What I'm saying is that we still have to value these other things. We still have to value the love for learning. And when it comes to PE, I'm not saying a GCSE PE. I'm a primary school teacher saying I want my kids to be active, and that time should not be taken away. And I will die by that hill. I think most people agree with that.
It's so funny. I love it when you get vexed by people.
Honestly, because you know what? Again, 98% of our comments are unbelievable.
Yeah,
and it's so kind, and it's really lovely, and it's nice to read. But those 2%, you stick with me. Because I don't mind people disagreeing with me. But when they just jump on something and just completely take out of context, I'm like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
You just want an argument.
Literally.
What are you...
I don't mind people disagreeing with me unless they're wrong. Basically. Which some people just are.
Anyway, simplicity. That's a really good point.
I've got another thing, because again, you talked earlier about that article and saying how we could just not teach kids certain things till they're older. It doesn't actually matter, does it? As long as they learn it at some point before they leave. Does it matter if they learn it at a smaller level in year 4 and then in year 5? Can we just teach it to them in year 6, in year 8? Yeah. So, do you think that we could remove subjects from particular year groups? Like, do you think we need to teach every single subject in the curriculum every year? Because that's what currently happens.
Okay, do you mean formally teach it in a standalone lesson in a string of lessons because that's just a unit of work? Or do you mean, for example, I would argue in this the made-up system of there's no subject of history in year 1, right? But there's so much reading around, the life of a Roman, so there's history happening, right? Yep. There is DT happening because the children are building something. There's art happening all the time. Do you mean, can we get rid of formalized ways of doing stuff? Or do you mean kids shouldn't do any art at all?
Let's turn it into a 2-part question because they're kind of different. My first one wasn't that. I think that's a good question. We should answer that in a second. But my first one is literally like within the constraints of how we do it right now. Let's say we still have formalized lessons. We do history, we do geography, we do art, we do DT, whatever. Do you how essential do you think it is that those subjects are taught every year if we're sticking to this current system?
I would absolutely keep them every year. I would, because I think if we're sticking to this system, I think dropping them feeds into that narrative of English and maths, English and maths, English and maths. Right now, when we drop off a history for a term, if we're talking about year 6 leading up to SATs, we would both sit here and go, that is disgusting how we would drop off stuff for English and maths and do extra stuff in the afternoon. I would be really reluctant for a whole year in year 4, let's say, to not do any geography or not do any art. I think the way we do it can change. I'd be really reluctant to drop something off completely.
Even if, so you kind of assumed that I was saying replace it with maths and English, even if we replace it just by doing a bigger mastery, more enriching approach on another subject. So art gets 6 weeks. Do
you know what I'd do? I'd turn it into, I'd go back to that idea. A lot of schools still do this, of topic.
Yeah.
I'd go back to the idea of let's have a topic that runs through and we really enrich on Romans. But you can do a bit of geography. Yeah. You can talk about their use of rivers and things like that. You can do a bit of DT. You can do some art. If you have a topic, it becomes more natural to feed them in. And we don't need to obsess over how much time we're spending on everything. Yeah. Because the topic is Romans. Yeah. And obviously history will probably be the biggest bulk of that. But then the next time you do a topic, it might be on, like you said, rivers. And the bulk is on geography. But then you can still feed everything in. So I think topic work helps with that.
No, that makes sense. I agree. Topic. It's kind of that was kind of your first point, wasn't it? About less formalized, more just integrated into something. Sure. I find it mad that we don't all do that. I think it's so obvious that topics are better. Yeah. But most schools, I'd say,
I think it moves, doesn't it, over time? Yeah. There was that big move to topic work. Yeah. And there was that basically when the Ofsted framework came and it was like each individual subject might be deep dived. Yeah. I think there was a big move back then to like, Christ, if history gets deep dived and I'm doing a topic on fairgrounds because it's a DT topic, let's just say, which is more about like building something and seeing how mechanics work and it's about science. How on earth can I get a history deep dive in there? So I think it was very much then went, okay, let's take history out, have history subject leaders again, and let's really focus on the continuity and like the skills part of history. That became way more like focused on, and I think that moved a lot of schools away from topic.
You're totally right, because I literally remember people panicking, saying, "Oh no, Ofsted have now said our school's not very good because we do topics, and we couldn't confidently, the children couldn't confidently say I'm learning about geography today."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I was like, cool, that's brilliant.
Yeah, who cares?
Who cares? Okay, tell them at the end of the year. Oh, by the way, that stuff there was called geography. There you go, done. No one cares, honestly. And also, that was an adverb.
Just wait until secondary school.
Yeah.
I have geography teacher. That's weird. I remember being like, I've never done geography as a thing. That's cool. I went to geography, and they were talking about it. I was like, I've done loads of this.
Yeah.
It didn't make a difference.
No, of course it didn't.
It didn't make a difference.
We're happy doing it with science.
Yeah.
We don't learn chemistry at primary school, do we? We'll get you a biology lesson.
You've got to know if it's a physics lesson or not. No, you don't.
Honestly.
No, you don't. You're 8. And do you know we can say it, right? But it's just not the most important thing in the world.
Do you think there's any parts of the curriculum that we could actually just cut?
Yeah, we said there's loads. I think there's loads. I think there's so much. And I would start with maths and English. I'd start there. Because you look at the amount of that's written in the curriculum for maths and English. Yeah. It's like reams and reams and reams compared to 2 pages for history. Like history, geography, DT, music, art, it's already quite open to interpretation and you just need to do a certain amount of thing. Like I'd go to English and I'd cull so much spag. spelling, punctuation, and grammar.
Yeah.
Go to maths, and I would simplify it so much. I would honestly get rid of so much lower down in the school. I really would, because as soon as you see it as a 4-year journey in Key Stage 2, or a 3-year journey in Key Stage 1, or a 7-year journey in primary school, as soon as you start looking at it that way, it makes so much more sense to have it top heavy.
Yeah.
Because do you know what? If you just smash the fundamentals, even up to year 4, genuinely, if all of your kids are really good at the fundamentals in year 4, year 5 and 6, you really can introduce stuff and learn it within a day.
Yeah.
What now takes 2 weeks, because you're like, I've got to go back over the stuff, because year 4 didn't do this properly, because year 4 were going back over the stuff previously, and they were trying to introduce new stuff all the time.
Yeah.
If you really smash the fundamentals lower down in the school, I can see why leaders don't like it, because it leaves only 2 years to get in there. It's like, oh God, what if they don't get it straight away? But it's not riskier, because if you absolutely smash the fundamentals, there's no way they won't understand the next stuff.
Exactly. But it's a game, isn't it? And people don't want to take that risk. Go, what if they didn't understand the fundamentals? Now they've not got either. Like, okay, well they didn't have either. They won't. Do you know what? They weren't going to get either anyway. Yeah. If they didn't get the fundamentals after 4 years of just doing the fundamentals, I tell you what, if you were doing both at the same time, they wouldn't know either of them still now anyway. So it doesn't matter. Like it's the wrong way of thinking.
Yeah.
And I know it. Do you know what? I know it's true, because COVID.
Yeah.
COVID happened. Yeah. And do you know what? Kids missed tons of education. Yeah. And I taught some of those kids in year 6, 2 years later, after they missed so much stuff. And do you know what? A ton of those objectives, where they would have had 2 years of, we have a little bit in here, a little bit in year 4, a little bit in year 5. They hadn't seen it till year 6, and guess what? They learned it. Honestly, it felt like just as quick, because they're like, our brains are bigger now. I just get this. It barely took me any more time with some of those things to teach. I'm not saying, we can just stop sending kids to year 4 and 5.
No.
But
COVID had, I think, a much bigger impact on the social side and the relationships between school and home, etc. Huge impact there. Obviously had a big impact on academic side, obviously, but as teachers, that's what we're quite good at. And I think there were ways that we could bring children up and through, and there was lots of money put in extra stuff there. I think that was more solvable than the social side.
Yeah. But I found it super interesting that there was almost like straight after COVID, being a year 6 teacher specifically, right? I was like, this didn't make too much of an impact. Because it's like, because the older kids that had already kind of got their foundations in place, it wasn't actually so hard to then teach them stuff on top of that, even if they'd missed a bit. 3 years later, as a year 6 teacher, it was when I started being like, oh my God, like the amount of gaps I'm seeing now, and the lack of mental math skills and oracy in general, because they're just not, they missed school in like your reception in year 1. They actually missed the foundations being taught in the first place. That's when you saw it like really impact. And it's like, doesn't that just reinforce the idea that we should really, really, really just hammer those foundations and not overcomplicate everything when they're 5? It doesn't make any sense, but it doesn't matter, because that proof, it's obviously that's meaningless, isn't it? It doesn't mean anything. We don't look at hard evidence. This is government.
I think the idea less is more is really important. And if we think about there's some people who sit here and go, well, because of this complexity, stuff's improved. And it's almost like what I said earlier. It's like, education is better than the 70s. If you looked at data from the 70s to now, you could justify anything. Right? You could say, just because education is better and like numbers are better, you could say, well, everything's better, and isn't this fantastic for our children? And there's probably some things that are benefited from being more complex. In terms of, I think, the standard of subject knowledge as a teacher getting higher, in my opinion, of what you should know. I think that is an overall good thing for our children. I think having that high standard, and teachers need to know more. I'm not saying they used to know less at all, but you have to know more now, because the curriculum's more dense. You teach yourself stuff as you go through.
Sure.
There's more maths to know. There's more English to know. Okay, like I said, we taught ourselves what adverbs are, etc. But do you know what? As a teacher, I think we should know what adverbs are. I think we should be able to, with the children, even if we do drop the bar slightly and say, let's just focus on these fundamentals because they're so important, there are always going to be children who we need to push on, right? And do more with. And I think as the teacher, we absolutely need to have a much higher level of knowledge and be almost a master of stuff to be able to allow the children to move 1, 2, 3 steps forward.
Absolutely. There's more.
So I think that's good.
I think, a good example of that, I'm sorry to reference, I'm in year 6 for the 50th time.
Are you in year 6, by the way?
I'm year 6.
Is it you who is, jamming out the photocopy every morning because I've got 74 tests to write. I've got 74 tests to do, I'm sorry.
It's test week every other week, actually. But like that's a really, that's just made me think, because I teach kids now where, do you know what, with GPS, grammar, punctuation, spelling, yes, I think it's over the top. I agree with everything you said. But there are some kids in my class where, because they are of that higher ability, I can teach them all those really complex terminologies. And then when it comes to their writing, it's so easy to say to them, I can use that language to them. Because as a teacher, I might be able to unpick writing. I don't care if the kids know. But for some kids, I can say, look, when you put your fronted adverbial there and you didn't use it as an adverbial phrase later, it made a weird flow to this sentence. And they get that. I'm like, that's sick. But I don't think every kid needs to know that.
No,
I just don't think they do.
No. And I'd say that's probably the only thing I think has improved is, like as a teacher myself, there's way more I need to know. And I think you're a better teacher the more you know. You cannot know everything. I'm not saying you should know everything. I teach myself about Egyptians every time I do Egyptians. That's completely normal. You can't know everything. But the base level stuff of maths and English in particular, I think you being the expert is absolutely a good thing. Yeah. And you build that up over time.
Yeah, sure. So those complexity isn't inherently bad, is what you're saying. It's just that we've kind of overkilled it in this, there is a lot of room for simplicity that we've lost.
Yeah. And I think for the kids, complexity is bad. I think for the children, simple goals.
Yeah.
Where if we're not reaching those simple goals, let's not add goals to it.
Yeah.
Let's be really simple with them and smash them.
And let's not forget the whole point of this, which Dylan has reinforced a lot through this episode, is we make the bars. Everything is made up. Don't forget that. We've set all of these boundaries. We decide what we even value. And, these metrics have gone up. It's like, yeah, because we don't look at the other ones anymore. We don't even measure mental maths anymore. So apparently that doesn't matter anymore. But to who? That's the point I want to make of this. I think we've lost our way a little bit with education and the real purpose of it. It's driving me away from the profession a little bit. Like, it's making me disengage from it because I don't think my purpose of teaching aligns with the system of education.
How often have you finished a day of teaching and genuinely thought that less than half of that was really, really having an impact that's measurable and good on the children? And how much have you thought, I could have done without that? Do you know what I wish I did? I wish I read that class book for longer because the kids are so engaged. They're getting more out of reading this story than doing an extra 2 tasks in the geography lesson, which was genuinely pointless.
Do you know what? More than half of the time. And I think that's where I've been pushed over. If it was less than half the time, maybe I'd still be a bit more optimistic. It's gone over that boundary for me. More than half of my week, I would finish a day. 3 days a week, I will finish and think, I could have culled half of that.
Is it 3 days a week your whole week?
Yeah, true. If I worked 5 days, two of my 3 days a week, I definitely
exposed.
Yeah, big time. I definitely finished the day thinking I didn't need to do half that stuff. It was boring, pointless. The kids weren't inspired. It was relentless. It's all complex. Now they think they're rubbish at these things because we did 72 things at once.
And you know what's sad very quickly is when it's in maths and English, you think that's when it's sad because there's so much maths and English that has such an impact. And you finish doing English sometimes and you just think, why did I just spend 40 minutes looking at test style questions that start with which word it shows you this? I could have done such a better, more inspiring lesson about word meaning and understanding what words mean without having to do it in this test style way, which, by the way, I only have to do because we all decided that's how we measure child's ability to read. It's insane.
And there it comes back to that point, doesn't it? I think we've hammered that point home in this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, everybody. Now, Dylan, well done, by the way, for making it through this episode. We've only had to do... Hang on, let me just count. Sorry, guys, you're going to have to wait for this.
No.
1, 2...
Right.
Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Only 12 edits. So if you've noticed a lot of cutting around in this episode, unlike normal where we're pretty uncut, it is because Dylan is imploding in his head.
When I talk, okay, maybe it's happening now. As soon as I feel fine when I'm listening to you, I'm like, I'm ready to make my point. I start talking and my nose just goes, close. Close that off. Can't breathe anymore. So I appreciate it. I think most people are ill right now.
Listen, you've done well. You've done well.
I've done well because you're the one editing. So,
yeah, I am. And normally you'd have had a meltdown by now. So well done. You've made it all the way through.
I've had about 5 meltdowns. Hopefully you cut them out.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to make a super edit of those. Look forward to episode 100.
Right. So we're looking at this now and we're going to let you behind the curtains to see how much this was actually affecting. We have recorded for 1 hour 20. So whatever you're on now, that's how much Hayden had to cut out because of me not being able to breathe.
Of Dylan snotting. Right. And with that, I'll leave you thinking of Dylan snot.
See you next time.
See you next time for episode 99. Ooh. So close.
Should we eat a 99 ice cream for the whole thing?
No.
Okay.